1:30. I'd like to call the meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Commission for September 15, 2014 to order. Roll call, Commissioner Witcher.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Littlefield.
Here, sir.
Commissioner White. No White. Commissioner Hale.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Schuline.
Here.
Commissioner Jenkins. Commissioner George. And Commissioner Yonkel.
Here.
Okay. I'd like to have a motion concerning the minutes of the August 18, 2014 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Commission.
Mr. Chairman, I move they be approved.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Schuline,
I'll second.
and we have a second from Commissioner Witcher. Do we have any talk on the meeting minutes? Okay, we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Witcher. Can I have your votes, please? Very good. Okay, item is approved. The report on license, taxis, and record services will be done next month. Next item is the consent docket. Do we have anybody here to speak against an item on the consent docket? Okay. Do we have any staff input on the consent docket?
No, all the comments are before you. We're recommending approval for it.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion concerning the consent docket?
I'll move approval.
We have a motion to approve the consent docket from Commissioner Witcher
Second.
and a second from Commissioner Jenkins. Do we have any talk on the consent docket? Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent docket from Commissioner Witcher, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. We're going down to 5A. That'll be Holtzclaw, Parking Service Manager, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73109, and the Traffic Management Division to consider a request to, one, remove the 2-hour meter parking on the south side of Couch Drive from approximately 375 feet east to 600 feet east of the east curb line of North Walker Avenue, and establish an 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday reserved city permit required parking zone in the same place, and 2, remove the 2-hour metered parking on the north side of Concord Drive from approximately 95 feet west to 175 feet west of the west curb line of North Walker Avenue, and establish an 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday reserved city permit required parking zone in the same place. Anybody here to speak on item 5A? Okay, can we have staff input, please?
Okay, we've got the staff comments before you. Noted in the first paragraph that this item was continued from the August 18th meeting because to address concerns that were expressed by Downtown Oklahoma City, Inc. and the Oklahoma City Museum of Art. On the 29th of last month, we received a supplemental request, which will be heard in item 5B. It is intended to replace part 1 of this particular request. So staff is going to recommend approval of the request by striking part 1 and considering, and we're recommending approval of part 2.
Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5A?
I'll move approval.
As written or modified?
As modified, recommended for modified.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Witcher to approve item 5A, striking number 1.
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Hale. Do we have any talk on this item? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, it seems like there's another, I guess the purpose of this is going to remove parking that's available to the public for city staff and...
Yeah, the primary intent is just to set aside spaces that can be used by, mostly for the purposes of serving the needs of public commission members, like the mayor and city council, this particular body, planning commission, because the city, there are a number of meetings that are held here at the city ordinarily, and what this does is it basically just sets aside a small number of spaces for use by those citizens that have, answered the call to public service to serve on various commissions and boards.
I think that sounds really good, but we're building a new parking garage right across the street. Is that not going to be satisfied? I mean, wouldn't that satisfy our needs to park there? I'd be happy to park there. I don't know about everybody else, but...
Did you want to answer that?
Okay, sir, if I could have your name and your address, please.
Yes, my name is Jason Fairbrush. I'm the administrator of the Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking
Authority, filling in for Debbie Holtzclaw today. So my office is located at 2000 South May Avenue, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73108.
And just fill out one of the forms when you're done, please.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so go ahead.
I thought I would try to answer that question a little bit. And the issue, or I should say the reason we brought forward this request to reserve that on-street parking is, primarily when we look at our garages, we design those garages and with the kind of the downtown office worker in mind. In other words, we need those spaces to be available all day. And when we're running at roughly 115% occupancy on our downtown garages, putting roughly 19 spaces, which is what the sum of the two items is, putting 19 spaces in that garage just reserved that, may or may not be used on some days, may be used for an hour one day and several hours the other. We really feel like because on-street parking is, designed for short-term parking in nature, that it would be appropriate to, use it for people conducting city business that are coming and going and yet leaving the garage for permanent long-term parking. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. I just hate to see parking for the public removed from the streets because I really do think that that's in short supply.
Right. And the other thing to think about on this too is when the garage is completed, there'll be a lot of on-street parking freed up just by, some people, like, for example, from the Hightower building that will be parking in the garage. A lot of the on-street parking now is being occupied by some of the construction workers and that kind of thing. So really, if you look at it in that respect, once the garage is complete, there actually will be more on-street parking in this vicinity than what we have now. Granted, not as much if we didn't have to use the 19. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
So they're reserved for a certain period of time during the day, till 5 o'clock, is it?
Right, from 8 to 5 is what the...
What if a commission meeting should run to 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening?
Well, from what I understand, it would just be open, you would already be there, and so it just... Right, because after 5, it turns into open parking.
Unmetered.
Unmetered open parking.
With you.
So if you come here Saturday, it's open. Come here Friday night after 5, it's open parking. Any other questions or comments on item 5A? Yes, ma'am.
I guess I'm with Commissioner Schulen on this, and what I want to understand, so from your perspective, the more preferred place to park is in the garage when you're for city employees or for the public.
Yeah.
I would like to see the parking that's reserved for those of us who volunteer to be the less preferred space than what the public has access to. We can bring an umbrella. I mean, so I just want to make sure if we vote to approve this, it's because we're saying, yes, this is less preferred and it's more ideal for the public in general that we go this route. I just want to make sure my gut is right on this.
Okay, well, I believe it is 10 of the spaces are actually across the street from Walker. They're going to be on the west side of Walker. So, they're not right there at City Hall. The other thing is I think we have to think about, who our typical customer is, speaking of, COTPA, and it's mostly the downtown worker, that needs a space all day. And so, I think it just kind of depends on what perspective you're coming from. If you're a citizen, then surely, on short-term business, then yes, it'd be great to have an on-street parking spot, right in front of where you need to be. If you're a downtown office worker, though, right, you're probably more interested in having a space in the garage that you can park your car there all day. And so I think it just kind of depends on the market and, what the purpose of the parking is. And so, again, kind of going back to our business model, the fact that we are looking at 115% occupancy now, probably expect to be at 100% occupancy system-wide when the garage opens. we really feel like, not reserving 19 spaces in our garage actually does help the people that are working downtown, they're coming downtown every day.
Thank you.
Okay, any other talk on item 5A? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5A as modified, striking sub 1 by Commissioner Witcher, seconded by Commissioner Hale. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Okay, item 5B, Debbie Hartsclaw, Parking Service Manager, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73109, and Traffic Management Division, to consider a request to remove 2-hour metered parking on the north side of Concord Drive from approximately 190 feet east to 305 feet east of the east curb line of North Walker Avenue, and establish an 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday reserved city permit required parking in the same place. You have anybody here to speak on item 5B? Staff input?
Okay, this particular item, part one of the last item had proposed a similar number of spaces, basically on the north side of the City Hall complex. This moves them to the south side, so it would thereby free up spaces that are more convenient for use by a use like the Oklahoma City Museum of Art. And that's the only substantial change. It's just been moved from the north side to the south. And would recommend approval.
Do we have a motion on item 5B?
I'll move approval.
Approval from Commissioner Witcher,
Second.
and second from Commissioner Hale. Any discussion on item 5B? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5B from Commissioner Witcher, seconded by Commissioner Hale. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Okay, 5C, Danny L. Brandt, U.S. General Services ad Administration, Fort Worth, Texas, 76102, and Traffic Management Division, to consider a request to, 1, establish 2-hour reserved parking spaces for the physically disabled on the west side of North Harvey Avenue between Northwest 6th Street and Northwest 7th Street, and 2, establish 2-hour metered parking on the north side of Northwest 6th Street from the west curb line of North Harvey Avenue to approximately 275 feet west of the west curb line of North Harvey Avenue. Do we have anybody here to speak on 5C? Yes, sir. Please come on up. Let me have your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Stan McCurry. I'm the operations manager for GSA here in Oklahoma, Public Building Service. We manage and operate the federal buildings here in the state of Oklahoma. My office address is 200 Northwest 4th Street at the federal courthouse. Speaking to our request, it's at the Oklahoma City Federal Building, the replacement building for the Murrah Building. We house 12 federal agencies in the building. It is fully occupied. And I have 2 agencies in the building that are needing some additional parking for their customers, specifically the Social Security Administration, Office of Disabilities, Appeals and Review, and also the Veterans Benefit Office is in that building also. Both these offices serve the state of Oklahoma as a region. And when we originally moved in the building in 2004, they have now since doubled their customers in seeing the building. So they went from over 300 a month up to 600 a month. They're seeing 600 veterans a month in the building, and then SSA is seeing from 150 when they started, now 300 a month for their review process. Currently, there is no parking along this area, and so we're looking to add handicap parking along the Harvey Street side. Also, the building was designed with an extra large handicap ramp. The ramp itself was 300 feet long, and it's very difficult for these patrons to traverse that ramp. We've since added a second ramp on the other side to shorten that. It's now a 150-foot ramp, and that's exactly where these spaces will be, is directly in front of that ramp. That's the main reason for our request. Any questions?
Fine. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Do we have staff input, please?
Okay, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Basically, what they're proposing is adding reserved parking spaces for the disabled along Harvey where there hasn't been any parking in the past. And they're proposing to construct an inset area on the north side of Northwest 6th Street. So because at this point in time, to park on 6th Street without making any form of a modification to the roadway would basically loss in the result of one of the westbound lanes on 6th. So what they're proposing will maintain the number of lanes on 6th Street, and it's not materially going to affect the number of lanes on Harvey, because both to the north and to the south of where they're proposing these particular spaces, there's already on-street parking. So functionally speaking, it's really not going to make any changes. And if the commission recommends approval of this, staff would recommend that approval be subject to the applicant bearing the responsibility for making any necessary modifications to the street in the way of building the inset areas and making the space, reconstructing the west side of Harvey such that it will be ADA compliant, which means there'll be a little bit of incidental widening and some wheelchair ramps that need to be installed.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have a motion concerning item 5C?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept staff's recommendation and approve the request.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Schuline with the recommendation from staff. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Jenkins. Do we, just before we press on, sir, if you could come on up, as the staff recommended, you guys would bear the cost of making the adjustments to Walker?
Yes, sir.
Harvey, I'm sorry.
We would provide the necessary funding to do that, yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Okay, any other questions or comments? Sir?
So has any drawing work been done to determine, when you do the inset on 6th Street, how much sidewalk is left? I doubt that you want to move the vehicle barriers that are in the grass. Do you know how much sidewalk you'll have left?
Correct. A little over 36, almost 40 inches will be left for the sidewalk. So we were waiting to hear from the city exactly what the actual requirements for that would be, and after hearing that, then it's going to be a little less than 40 inches.
Otherwise, you'd have to relocate the vehicle barriers?
Move the vehicle barriers, yes.
Well, I might add that any improvements that are made, I mean, an ADA accessible aisle has to be maintained. So, if barriers might need to be slightly adjusted in order to make sure that the walkway meets federal requirements, that would be a building permit requirement.
And we're certainly prepared to bring a design team to design both of these projects before we would begin construction, so to make sure it meets the requirements.
Okay, anybody else have a question or comment on 5C?
Is there currently parking along there?
Which street?
On, I'm looking at, it must be, what would that be, 7th? Or Northwest 6th?
Well, if it's on the low, if it's
Picture number on North Harvey Avenue.
on Harvey, in the area where they're requesting, it's currently signed no parking anytime.
Has there been serious consideration and thought about, God forbid?
Yes. This building was designed with the necessary security setbacks that could allow for parking in this area.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on 5C? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5C as recommended by, and with the add-on from the city staff, from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Good. Okay, item 5D, Keith D. Wilkerson, Office of Americans with Disability Act Coordination, City of Oklahoma City General Services Department, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73102, to consider a request to establish reserved parking spaces for the physically disabled on North Broadway Avenue at the following locations. One space on the east side of North Broadway Avenue from approximately 200 feet north to 225 feet north of the north curb line of Northwest 5th Street. 2, one space on the west side of North Broadway Avenue from approximately 95 feet north to 120 feet north of the north curb line on Northwest 6th Street. 3, one space on the east side of North Broadway Avenue from approximately 95 feet north to 120 feet north of the north curb line of Northwest 7th Street. 4, one space on the west side of North Broadway Avenue from approximately 95 feet north to 125 feet north of the north curb line of Northwest 5th Street. And 5, one space on the east side of North Broadway Avenue from approximately 95 feet north to 120 feet north of the north curb line of Northwest 9th Street. Anybody here to speak on item 5D? Okay, can we have staff input, please?
We're recommending approval of the requests as presented.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion concerning 5D?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the request as presented.
We have a motion to approve as presented from Commissioner Schuline,
I'll second, sir.
and we have a second from Commissioner Witcher. Do we have any discussion on item 5D? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5D from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Witcher. Can I have your votes, please? All right. Thank you very much. Item is approved. 5E, Patricia Mays, Edmond, Oklahoma, 73012. Consider request for 1, the establishment of an all-way stop control at the intersection of Bridle Drive and Northwest 197th Street, and 2, the addition of east and westbound stop signs on Northwest 197th Street at its intersection with Lariat Drive in order to establish all-way stop control. Anybody here speak on item 5E? Okay. Looks like we have one that filled one out, but if you all want to talk, make sure to fill one of these out when you're done.
We filled them out.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got it. Got it.
Good
Okay.
afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for hearing us.
Ma'am, if I could have your
Yes.
name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm Patricia Mays, and I live at 1204 Northwest 197th Street, Edmond, Oklahoma, 73012. We moved to Danforth Farms in June of '87. 197th Street ended, it dead-ended at Lariat Drive. Since '87, our addition has grown, has tripled, basically. And the traffic that we see coming from Western, going up 197th Street to Corral, is the length of about 5.5 football fields. And people in that distance, because it's a straight street, can get up to quite a high speed. We yell at people to slow down. We beg people to slow down. Teenagers, grandparents, all kinds of people are just flying down our neighborhood. Granted, thank goodness there has not been a traffic accident so far, but it's probably a matter of time. Danforth has closed, so therefore all the traffic coming off of Danforth goes through our neighborhood and comes down our street. The traffic is amazing coming down there. We have grandchildren, we have children, and it is really very dangerous for us to even, for my husband to even go out and edge the yard because of the speed that the cars have come down. I've called the police and asked them to please come out and just to observe what's going on, and so far we haven't had a policeman come. What we are asking is just to slow our traffic down. We know that it's not going to help the amount, but to slow it down. There are 2 streets that come into ours. One is at Lariat. It's a 3-way, and there's one at Bridle that comes in, and we are just begging you to let us have some 3-way stop signs there to slow the traffic down. People coming from Corral going down our street, they would have to stop there at Lariat. People from Western coming up our street would stop at Bridle. It would slow the traffic down. Like I said, it will not keep the amount of traffic that we have, but it will slow people down. I can tell you that we've been outside, and I would say probably people do 50 to 60 going up and down our street, and that's in our neighborhood. It's dangerous, and we fear for our children's lives, our pets, our own lives. And we just ask that you just help us by putting in these stop signs.
All right, thank you. So, anybody else? Name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Laura Rasmussen. I live at 1309 Northwest 197th, not too far from Ms. Mays. I'm here to really just show extreme support for Ms. Mays' proposal today. We've lived on the street since July of 2011. Obviously, Ms. Mays has lived there since the get-go, and so she's kind of seen the neighborhood grow. It was that size when we moved in. I do want to point out that I lived in that neighborhood before the construction started, so the issues that I've seen with excessive speed are not new. They're not necessarily just related to the construction. The traffic count maybe, but the speed is not. What I've observed in my neighborhood, the excessive speed that she's talking about, it's not the outlier, stereotypical high school kid who's not paying attention. It's all ages of people. It's middle-aged people, grandparents, etc. Our neighbors lost their mailbox, their brick mailbox. Somebody was going too fast, hopped a curb, plowed the mailbox right over. The neighbor next to them lost their picket fence. Same issue. Somebody was going too fast, hopped the curb. My dog was actually hit. He's okay, but the most on the ball, on point dog owner who tried to keep their dog inside. Every now and then, a dog is going to get excited and run out the door. It happens, and this person was going too fast, and she hit him. Last Halloween evening, kids out in the street all over the place. There was a driver, I would say, probably going 60 miles an hour down our street. Again, it's a public safety issue is what's happening here. My kids can't safely play in the front yard. And I'm not talking about not playing in the street. When we have people getting their mailboxes and picket fences taken out, I can't let my kids play in the yard. I feel that Ms. Mays' proposal to add stop signs is an excellent one because it would impede the speed. The street is not only, as she pointed out, very long. It's a long stretch with no curves, no natural impediments to stop. It's very wide as well. There's a whole body of research that shows, that I found easily, if you just Google searches, that shows that wide streets like that subconsciously encourage people to speed. I'm sure you all are aware of this. My question is, if not these stop signs, I understand that the staff is maybe recommending against putting the stop signs in. And I have to say, I was really disappointed when I found that out today. Because if not these stop signs, then what? If the 24-hour police patrols, that's not obviously a realistic approach. I'd be happy with speed bumps. I'm told Oklahoma City does not like to install speed bumps. Again, if not the stop signs, what? We have a public safety issue that is happening here. Our kids and our pets are in danger. To me, knowing that this research is out there, and the fact that nothing's been done about it for several years, is there a liability issue for the city here when something inevitably happens? With the level of speed on this 0.4 miles stretch of road with no stops, no curves, wide road, something is bound to happen. And I'm really, really urging you to consider this proposal. All the neighbors are in support of it. A stop sign, 2 stop signs, that's an inconvenience to me. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I go the speed limit. I am happy to make those 2 extra stops because of the increased safety and security it would bring to our neighborhood, and I really urge you to consider this proposal and vote in favor of it. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Somebody else? You want it? Name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. My name is Sherry Prince. I live at 1205 Northwest 197th, Edmond, Oklahoma 73012. The only thing I would like to add, or a couple things I'd like to add, is my husband, Judge Tom Prince, and the next door neighbor, Judge Roger Stewart, we've both lived there for over 20 years. We have seen this problem grow. The only other thing I would add about this, if you do try and stop someone, then you have road rage. I had a lady get out of her car and come at me because she was very upset that we were yelling, slow down. It really is, and you can see it's an emotional thing because we've watched this neighborhood really under attack, and no one seems to be able to help us. So that's why we're here. This is what we'd love for you to consider. And I know that it's important to have perimeters, but also it's important to have common sense. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have one more wish to speak. Name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Jim Mays, and I live at 1204 Northwest 197th, Edmond, 73012. And the only thing I'd like to add is that when we went out and solicited consent from our neighbors, we had 32 of our neighbors that signed the petition that we presented to the city. All of them agreed to the recommendation of the stop sign. So we had no opposition to it in the neighborhood. My grandson and I, he's 2 years old, and I panic if he gets anywhere close to the street because there's just so much traffic and it's going so fast that it's very much a concern. And I join Ms. Prince in her comments because we were out in the street the night. We kind of confronted a speeding driver down the street who stopped and got very vocal with us just for asking her to slow down. She said, well, I wasn't going over 30 or 35 miles an hour. And I said, but there's 2 cars parked on both sides of the streets, and if a child walked out, there'd been no way you could have even begun to stop. So again, we asked and plead upon your common sense approach to this matter, knowing that maybe not all the standards for the city for these stop signs are met with traffic and visibility and those kind of things, but from a person who lives on the street, we asked your help. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else to speak on this item? Okay, staff input, please.
All right, well, you've got our complete comments before you. In the recommendation section, we do note that with respect to the city's always stop criteria and those found in the manual and uniform traffic control devices, that neither of these intersections on a traffic basis merit the use of always stop control, given the volumes, the absence of collision histories, and no particular sight distance hazards being present. It's for that reason that staff doesn't have cause to recommend placement of additional stop controls at either intersection at this time. You know, the use of a yield control on Bridle Drive at 197th Street based on our current policies would be appropriate. As you've heard, you know, there's been much discussion about excessive speed on these particular streets. You know, there is, with the city's project that's got Danforth Road closed in this area, what we would ordinarily expect in the way of traffic volumes is about 1,700 vehicles per day on this particular street. They're currently running around 2,500. But, you know, the side streets don't contribute that much into these intersections. It's just the main line volume, which is the traffic passing through on 197th Street, which is elevated for the time being. So action on this matter is going to be at the discretion of the Commission.
All right, thank you. We have a motion on item 5E.
I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Littlefield and a second from Commissioner Schuline. 5E. Do we have any talk on item 5E?
Stuart, is there are we still getting 85th percentile speed information when we survey these things? I didn't notice that in the report.
Yeah, on this particular study, we didn't have our collectors set up to collect speed information. We were just gathering volume because when it comes to reviewing an intersection for something like stop control, speed is not an issue. That's just not one of the consideration criteria. It's a function of assigning the appropriate level of right-of-way based on demonstrated use of the street. Now, in a particular case like this, where you're getting a volume that's, you know, up over 2,000 vehicles a day on a residential street, obviously that's not your typical volume in a neighborhood.
But we have no data that substantiates that there's a lot of speeding or that there's not, one way or another, from our study?
Not for this study, no.
Okay, sir.
To me, it's another one of those classic situations where we have 100% of the people required to fulfill a petition to ask to solve a problem in their neighborhood that they perceive, and we don't live there, and the only thing that we have to offer them is a stop sign. And I'm all for it, and I'd also like to see a couple of driver feedback devices set up out there as soon as possible for a period of time. Thank you.
Well, I like to just throw out there, and I'm not talking speed bumps, you know, the little 1 foot high kind of speed bump thing. But, you know, when you go places and you see these speed humps where, you know, if you hit it at 25 miles an hour, you felt like you went up and over something. It's not anything that'll wreck anything. It just gets you up and then back down again. Why is the city not wanting to let neighborhoods put those kind of things in that would not be a bump like you would when you go over a 5-10 mile an hour thing, you go real slow, but just a hump in the road. It wouldn't affect snowplows. One, first of all, we don't snowplow side streets anyway. I mean, so that's not an issue if we call it snowplow. That was always something that you heard was we don't want speed bumps because of snowplowing and that kind of stuff. But these streets don't get snowplows. Any input, any talk about that, either from staff or from other traffic commissioners? That, is that something we would think is okay?
Well, currently, it's the city's policy not to place anything like that in a roadway. I mean, I can certainly understand where you're coming from on it, but, one thing that, you may or may not consider is, one of the reasons why streets, especially residential streets, are curbed for the most part is because it's a stormwater conveyance mean. Basically, a street will function as a channel. If you place something like a speed hump in it, you're now altering drainage conditions on the road. That's just one possible consideration. The other is that, a speed hump, or in this particular case, say a pair of back-to-back intersections with all-way stop control, they have a tendency to moderate speed in the immediate vicinity of the device, but beyond those points, some drivers will have a tendency to make up speed elsewhere. So to say that just to do something, if you start looking at a structural change to a road, you probably need a consistent approach to that, where rather than just placing one or two or something like that, they now be placed maybe on more of a uniform pattern. And over the years, my personal experience in use of things like this is for every person that favors a device like that, you'll probably find somebody else that doesn't care for it so much. So it's not that you can find it's not necessarily a best one-size-fits-all solution. I mean, there is a lot to this, and the traffic calming subcommittee that I suppose will meet after this meeting, we've been doing a lot of work recently with our driver feedback cards, and that's one of the things that Mr. Littlefield requested, and we can go ahead and get those things scheduled. And it's been rather an interesting process, because we've got one street that we'll talk about later on this afternoon. We've placed carts on Drakestone Drive, which is just on the north side of Wilshire and east of May Avenue. It's on a block that's about 1,600 feet long. Both the ends of this road are always stop controlled, but because of the length of the block, we're getting, our study so far has shown that more than half of the people are going 4 miles or more better over the speed limit. So, I mean, it is a challenge. It's very much a challenge. And at this point in time, right now we're going through the process of trying to figure out what will work and how we might, attempt to use something like that. And right now, driver feedback carts and maybe potentially the use of permanently mounted signs might be the way we go to kind of, re-educate and remind people what they should, what the appropriate behavior is on a residential street. We're still we're still exploring that.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am?
Just a few remarks. On the visual we're looking at, the signs here are just around the proposal. Are there no other stops or yields, like in the neighborhood area, other than what we're seeing, or are they just not posted for purposes of this presentation? Will the addition of these stops make the intersections even real inconsistent, is my first question. Secondly, I live in an area where stop signs were put in, speeding's terrible. Two things I've observed. It's helped some, others blow them like they were never there, which has almost now, and I'm glad for the stop signs. I'm in favor of this personally. I love the stop signs. It does slow down some. However, what I will caution you about is, for those of you who live there, you now have a perceived idea that people are actually going to stop. It could create a heightened danger for you. That's not the right word. I'm not a traffic expert. I'm a volunteer. But I'm trying to just help share what I've observed. It's made us have to be more vigilant on our own, because we, law-abiding people, stop at those. You have many people who do not care one bit about your intersection or your safety. They're going to blow them while your kids are out there. So, note to self, if and when these go up, it doesn't change behavior of these people who are disregarding the law anyway. Maybe some, not enough of them.
Ma'am, if you come up here, please. No, that's fine, thank you.
In the new part of the neighborhood that comes off of Danforth, it's Danforth Boulevard, they have a stop sign on that street. It's quite long, and there is a stop sign there. And then coming around to ours, there's an S-curve, and they have stop signs there.
Okay.
But then from Corral, coming all the way down ours, which is over 1,600 square feet, is that what you said, 16? I mean, sorry,
Linear.
16,
Yeah.
anyway, 1,600. There is no stop signs on that one long stretch. And so I know that they're not going to always stop. I understand that. But if they slow down and just ease through them, they've slowed down. That is what we are just trying desperately to get, is people to slow down. And I've often even thought, okay, what would happen if on a rainy night I went out and put some cement out into the street and just hope that the cement was
We
there?
didn't hear that.
I'm sorry,
Didn't hear
but
that.
that's to the point where we are, and I know that's not what we want to do because we want to follow the law. But like you said, law-abiding citizens are going to do the 25. But the kids, the teenagers, and people that are on their phone and talking and have kids and they're in a hurry, they don't. And so, yes, we're just hoping to slow people down.
So the last part of this would be some sort of time period of enforcement. I mean, because I still, in our area, I call and say, I actually observed somebody, I thought this just happened like when I was a kid, when they actually turn out their lights and blow your stop signs at full speed and then they turn. I actually saw that about 3 weeks ago. It's still happening. So I'm like on first name basis with the non-emergency line because I'll say, I still have people blowing my stop signs. It's bad. So I just want to prepare you, this does not solve.
I know.
Those who are your biggest offenders do not care.
The speed
About the
bumps would
sign.
solve the problem because they would have to slow down. I know that. And that would probably be the best solution. But because we've been told we can't have speed bumps, then we're looking, okay, if that's the best, what would be the next best? What would help us that we could really try and get? And that's what we're trying to do, is just come up with something. So.
Okay. Any other comments, sir?
I totally agree with Commissioner Yokel. You cannot assume now that if you're at a stop sign that the next person's going to stop, which is really important. And just some information, there is a subcommittee that's working on traffic calming, and there's two situations. One situation is yours, where there is a neighborhood that exists, and there's a problem, and we're trying to find devices to help solve that problem. And the other problem is that developers have designed neighborhoods with speedways. So there's also an effort to try to come up with something in the development services process where there's a requirement, possibly, for developers to build into these planned developments curves or chains or, whatever it's going to take to calm traffic so we don't have to keep looking at these things. But I reiterate that today they perceive something, and we don't live there, and the only thing other than a yield sign is the stop sign. And one other point in the subcommittee work is we've agreed to go back to pick 2 or 3 previous applications like yours where we approve stop signs, but we're going to compare current activity to what the activity was when they made the application to see if they actually are having any kind of an impact. That's interesting. But
I'll be glad to come back in a year and tell you that it worked.
I'd love it if you would.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from up here? Yes, sir.
Would a yield sign be more appropriate at this time?
The only place a yield sign would be on the side street, and that's based on traffic demand. I mean, when you've got, almost 90% of the traffic on 197th Street and then, just something upwards of 10% on the minor road, From a right-of-way assignment perspective, we'd just be, posting a yield on the minor street approach. So in this particular case, with respect to like any means of affecting traffic on the main line road on 197th Street in this case, no, it would not.
Okay, any other questions or comments on item 5E? Okay,
How long does the driver feedback device, how long do we typically put it out?
We'll typically leave them out for about a week at a time because they're battery operated and they don't recharge on their own, so we can gather data and leave them out about on one week increments.
So along with driver feedback, can we also, should this be approved, get an enforcement period where we're sitting there and we're giving tickets to violators?
Yes, ma'am. We can pass the information on to our solo motorcycle unit and have them go up there and do some traffic enforcement along with that.
Are you familiar with what a driver feedback device is? Sir, you want to explain?
All right. What it is it's designed to work in conjunction with a posted speed limit sign. Typically, you've seen them, or you may have seen them, they'll have like the standard speed limit sign above them, and then they will flash back something that says like your speed. And we've got a couple different varieties of those. So we can have those placed out on 197th Street.
I did ask about
Ma'am?
that. I'm sorry. I did ask about that, and I don't remember if it was you that I talked to, but I did ask someone about it, and they said usually with one of those, then they see their speed and they speed up to get it as fast as they can. That's what I was told.
Yeah, well, we've considered that, and the signs that we use are programmable.
Okay,
And they are not designed to reward bad behavior.
okay.
So, above the speed limit, it'll flash your speed back at you, and then a certain limit above that, it just changes. The speed that you're going is no longer shown, and you'll get a message that says, like, slow down, and then one step beyond that, it's got a red and blue strobe built into it.
Oh, that's awesome. I will say that on Lariat, coming onto 197, does have a stop sign there. Bridle did have a stop sign coming onto 197, but it's been taken down. Kids, I guess. I don't know. Somebody came and took that sign down. But there was one there at one time, but there's no longer one there. Lariat does have the stop sign already there.
So he'll look to make sure that there's one
we'll check our records.
on the records, and then they can put one up there. Okay. Any other talk on item 5E? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5E from Commissioner Littlefield, seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Can I have your votes, please? Item is approved. Okay, item 5F, G, and H. Just to talk real quick before I read them in, last meeting we submitted some information to the City Council concerning vehicle for hire. City Council read it in, had some comments, and then they've now sent back 3 items to us to think about. So first of all, I'd like to thank City Council for sending it back to us to let us provide some input on what we did recommend. And one thing that last month that I didn't do was I didn't thank city staff, the legal office, vehicle for hire people, taxis, limos, Uber, Lyft, all them kind of vehicles for the work that they did. As you remember, we had a great concern at the start of this year, and we sent a note over to City Council, please work this. And as was mentioned, and I didn't say thank you last meeting, so this allows me to give this opportunity to say thanks to everybody for, in 6 months, did the work of a 1.5 to 2 year effort. So we moved, and we received what I think we wanted from the city staff, and then we passed it along. So now City Council has come back with 3 items that we'll get to talk about. So I just wanted to summarize that and to say thanks to city staff for all their hard work to get to this point, and also all the different vehicle for hire companies out there. So item 5F, which is Oklahoma City Council to consider make sure here. Yes, it is 5. Okay, item 5F, to consider a recommendation to the Oklahoma City Council on proposed amendments to the draft ordinance amending Articles 1 and 2 and add in Article 3 to Chapter 56 of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code 2010 regarding motor vehicle for hire, amending Section 56-80A6 by striking the physical requirement, Section 5681A7 by striking the physical requirement, Section 5683 by striking the physical evaluation from subsection F and G, Section 56-207A7 and D7 by striking the physical requirement, Section 56-208 by striking the physical evaluation from subsection F and G, Section 56-311A7 by striking the physical requirement, and Section 56-312A7 by striking the physical requirement, Section 56-315 by striking the physical evaluation from subsection F and G. Okay, anybody here to speak on this item? Ma'am, may I have your name and your address, please?
Chairman Cindy Richard, Deputy Municipal Counsel for the City Attorney's Office. From this building, just briefly, you can see it says physical, physical, physical. That's because we're involving all 3 articles here. The first article being taxis and limos, second article being carriages, third article being transportation network vehicles. So there was previously existing a requirement for taxi and limo drivers and I think carriages to go get a physical before they could be permitted. So council is recommending an amendment to the existing ordinances and as well as the proposed ordinance regarding TNVs, that no physical be required for a driver to receive a permit.
Thank you very much. Do we have staff input? Any further?
No further input.
Okay. Do we have a motion concerning item 5F?
Move for approval.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Littlefield
I'll second.
and a second by Commissioner Witcher. Do we have any discussion on item 5F?
Do we know why we had a physical requirement previously?
Well, from when we worked on the subcommittee work on vehicle for hire 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was talking about, is the person capable? Are they going to die while they're driving one of the citizens around? Is there something wrong with them that's outwardly wrong? Of course, you can't say for sure, even if you have a doctor say that they're good, that they're not going to die, or they're not going to be a problem. But from what I recall, it was just to make sure that somebody looks at them and says that they're okay.
Right. And I might add one other thing, that the requirements regarding physicals was there was an examination that was performed once every 5 years.
Okay. Sorry.
And if there was anyone from the industry that was willing to comment on the need for a physical or whether that's good or bad or onerous, I'd appreciate.
Come on up. We have one. Can I have your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Well, here we are again. My name is Joey Allen, 4801 Northwest 10th Street. I spoke in favor of keeping it to the City Council, so I'll be happy to answer your question. Yes, they were only required every 5 years. What it did for us was allow, when we had a new chauffeur that we were adding, or when we even a chauffeur that we'd had for some time, when they would go get that physical, and it was not an incredibly invasive physical. Matter of fact, you can go to Broadway Clinic, CRG Labs, a number of places around town for less than $40 get what they call a taxi cab physical, which basically checks your reflexes, checks your blood pressure, checks your eyesight, checks your hearing, make sure that it's safe for you to drive. The other thing that you have to do when you fill out a physical form is you have to list the medications that you take. And this was always the biggest thing for us, was that when we got back the list of medications that someone was taking, if there was something on there that impaired their ability to drive at any point in time, then we were aware of it, and we could question it. Is it something you're taking short-term? Is it something you take long-term? What determines you taking it? The City Council had someone stand in this spot 3 weeks ago and say to them that they took a prescription drug on a regular basis that impeded their ability to drive for a TNC, and so they chose when they felt good enough to drive and when they did not feel good enough to drive. Can that be done with a drug test? That can be done with some other way. I mean, yes, the current stipulation is 5 years, so it's not foolproof by any imagination. But for new hires, for us, it was a stopgap. I can't ask them on I assume, on an application, are you taking any drugs that would impair your ability to drive at any point in time? So it was just kind of a stopgap for us. That's the main reason.
To your knowledge, are there any kind of insurance implications for you and that taxi cab physical?
Our insurance requires a drug test to be ran every year, but not a physical.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Could you not require a physical just on the basis of your business operations?
We could. Yes, we could.
Ma'am, did you have something?
Can you just explain why the removal? Why the recommendation for the removal?
No, I wouldn't presume to speak on their legislative intent. I can just tell you that they voted on it, and that was their vote.
Okay. Anybody else on item 5F? Do you? Go ahead. Yeah. If I could have your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Greg Pruitt. I'm the owner of Kings Worldwide, and I live at 1403 North Purdue Avenue in Oklahoma City. I don't have comments for you, but what I have wanted to hear all along is perhaps from the police department as why it is important, or used to be important, or might not be important to have physicals in this process. We've not heard anything. I, like you, am wondering why City Council is recommending that this be removed. So I think it's important to hear from people like Joey that just spoke to you. There are circumstances that I can see it being very beneficial. So I'd like to hear from the police department if they would let us know if or if it's not important.
Yes, ma'am.
What I can tell you, Chief Berry, Assistant City Manager, had to leave. He apologizes. He intended to be here, but couldn't wait any longer. He and Chief City are aware of the recommendation of City Council, and the police department is not here to make any comments today on that.
Okay. Sir?
My question is, why is it a bad thing to have a physical for the protection of our citizens? This is what, once every 5 years currently? And from what you're describing, it sounds like a very invasive exam. And yes, health can change, but at least it gives us a benchmark that, you know, at this point in time, this person was physically fit to convey citizens in a safe manner.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am, you had a question, comment?
If removed from here, it is still possible to be done. It would just have to be done on each individual company basis. Therefore, it would be inconsistent through the system. Is that, am I following?
Right. So you're saying if we do take it out of the ordinance that requires it, then it would be up to the individual companies, if they want to continue to do it on their own.
Yes.
Correct.
Can they legally require it as a point of entry into the
Right. Yeah, they're not in it, yes.
Oh, okay.
So if it is important to the industry, then the industry can continue to do it. The question is, up here is it important to the Traffic Commission, thus City Council, to put it in an ordinance to require it to be done? So is a 5-year physical, $40 here and I check kind of thing, every 5 years, or at first hire and then 5 years, something that the city needs to have done compared to does the industry want to do it however often they want to do it, is really what's coming up on this question to us.
Okay, so currently, cabs and limos and carriages currently have to provide this physical, correct?
When they start, and then every 5 years. Correct.
Okay, so we're changing just to accommodate a new business
The
that's coming in.
TNVs. The TNVs, the ordinance that we sent had this as a requirement. Ma'am, am I correct on that?
I just want to be really clear. The physicals are currently required for taxis and limos. I'm not sure whether they're currently required for carriage drivers. What I can tell you is that in our proposed amendment, a physical was also required for carriage drivers, as well as TNV drivers. What council has referred back for your consideration is to remove the physical requirement for everyone. So it's not require one article over another.
Well, but in the one that we proposed to the city council, TNVs would be required to do the physical.
Along with all drivers.
Right, all drivers, right. So what we submitted last month was all drivers would be like taxis and limos, have that first one, and then every 5 years. From the city council, they're coming back to us saying, do we really need to do that? Is that something we want vehicle for hire drivers, whatever they are, to have this as a requirement? Does the city need to have it done? Not that industry wants it done, because they can do it on their own. Is it a requirement from the city to put this upon the drivers to prove that they have a certain level of physicalness?
Excuse me, I'd like to know from the people currently in the industry, has this been an imposition?
For us, it's just been another step in getting someone licensed each time that we have a new hire. As I said, you can go, what we do now, all of the requirements that we meet, which your next item on there, the violent offenders and sexual offenders, adding that to OSBI, we've been doing that for years anyway. That's an additional $4 when you go to OSBI and get that background check done. You can get a license for less than $100. It's not really, I mean, at these kinds of places where you can go to get these, it's not though like you have to schedule it weeks or months in advance. You don't have to wait for an appointment. If you come into my office this afternoon, I can have you in getting a physical tomorrow.
Okay, if it's not an inconvenience, is it of any benefit?
Just what I mentioned earlier, which I believe is it gives us more information about the person that we're putting on the street and our clients that we're putting in the back of the car. It gives us more information to judge and choose who is and who might not be a good character candidate, whether or not they reveal all of the medications that they might be taking, can they see, can they hear, those kinds of things. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Okay. Ma'am, did you have another question, comment?
This is, I hate asking this question. It feels like a dumb question. I feel like we only have part of the information here, which I struggle to sort through it. I would like to know why the recommendation to remove. Without that piece of information, I feel a little blindsided by this. But is there any possibility this is being recommended to remove across the board because by having a driver's license, there's an assumption you're physically ready to drive with someone in your car? I'm trying to find why the request for removal, because I've got to believe City Council wants a safe driver behind the wheel. I don't think that they would put the recommendation to remove it with the idea that it was going to, remove.
If we go back to the talk that occurred last month when we talked about the ordinance going forward, some of the industry came to us and said they would rather self-check on each other, whether it be for driver's licensing and driving history and all these different things, do their self-checking on their own and not require the city, or not have the city to require upon them things like this. And I'm just generalizing in a general way, that this was an example of, it was brought up by the TMV people, why do we even want them to get a $35 permit? Why should we even have them come to the city to say, I'm going to be a driver? Let the TMV companies do their own monitoring, their own evaluation. So you could see this could be a follow-up to that of, okay, if there's no real requirement for the city to have a documented doctor say they can hear, they can see to a certain level, a taxi physical, if there's no requirement, no real need that the city has, then why place it upon industry to do it? If industry wants it, they'll do it on their own. And that is my opinion of why this one item has come back to us, is that City Council is saying to us, this is something that the city shouldn't have to regulate. This is an issue that if the companies want it, they can regulate it on their own. So the question to us, in my opinion, is this a must-be, the city must regulate it for the safety of the citizenship and good order out there?
And is it possible that a company may say, I'm not going to do this. I don't need a physical. I'm not paying the extra however much.
Well, that goes into the whole thing of the TMVs, was they're saying that they regulate themselves. They look at themselves, they have these things, these insurance requirements, they have these driver requirements, et cetera, et cetera. There's no need for the city to regulate. And what we talked about was, yes, that might be their personal business model, but new companies coming in may not have the same business model, the same concerns. So at some point, city government must regulate to ensure a certain level of a product is out there. And so in this situation...
Removal of this says they have the option to have a physical or not as the individual companies. It is their choice.
Well, yeah, that we as the city is saying, no, there's no need to have a physical.
And some may opt out.
Yeah, right, well, yeah. Sure.
Excuse me, were you next?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Well, I think you covered what I was thinking, that this is a regulation or a procedure that we really don't need to be involved in. If I, as a company, assumes responsibility, then if the person has a heart attack, then it's on my company. The city is not involved in it. So I don't see a problem with removing this as one of the provisions.
Okay, thank you. Sir?
Our intent is to formulate an ordinance that provides, that considers public safety. And in an effort to do that, there need to be reasonable things to accomplish that. And God forbid I should have been a cab driver needing a physical in the past 5 years. What can happen in 5 years is ridiculous, and it just seems to me like it's a regulation that doesn't accomplish the goal of providing public safety. And that's why I don't see any problem eliminating the requirement. Leave it up to the industry to make sure that they have healthy drivers.
Okay. All right, anybody else have comment on item 5F? Yes, sir?
Well, I guess I don't have as much confidence as you guys do in not necessarily the industry, but certainly from everything we've seen from the TNVs, they want nothing, they want no regulation. It's just no, 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 they want nothing. So how can we be confident that they are going to, I guess I don't trust them unless we have, this is very minimal. It is so non-invasive. We're not asking, we want to know they can see. I just want to know that if I get in a Uber vehicle or a taxi cab that the driver, has good vision. I don't think it's asking for much.
Well, the driver has to have a driver's license, and you check to see if you can see to get a driver's license. I hope so. Only one time. The other thing that I'm thinking is that I don't think that council brought this to us as an effort to appease requirements on the TNVs. I think what council perceived was trying to develop a more fair playing field and look at the regulations that really do make a difference for public safety or not. And if the amendment was that every vehicle for hire driver has to have a physical every year, I might go yay. That's where my mind is.
My own take on the physical, whatever, is yes, they have a driver's license, but I have no problem personally holding a person that's driving with the health and safety of a passenger, holding for money, holding them to a higher calling as far as their ability to drive. And if we do send this back to the council with a recommendation that instead of every 5 years, it's every year, I've got no problem with that either. But just to say that it's a free-for-all and we're just going to trust the industry, my industry regulates me. There are certain things I have to, criteria I have to meet every year. So I don't know why we should, and there's other members of this body that are under scrutiny. And to say that this industry, you can regulate yourself without any outside regulation is kind of unusual. It would not be the norm.
Well, and the key is a medical evaluation, a cursory medical evaluation necessary for the public safety? And if it is, well, then we need to make that a recommendation. If it's not that big of a concern, then that's why they're asking us to go ahead and pull it out. We're assuming that they think it's not, and they're asking for our input. Now, if we can always go back and say, no, it really is. In fact, it needs to go the other way. If that's really where we think we need to go.
Is there anybody here today that would have any information to provide about physical examination requirements for bus drivers, tow truck drivers, all kinds of other industries that are using our roads? Is there another industry that's required to do that? I don't honestly know the answer to it.
That's a good question.
Fortunately, Kopta left a few minutes
Yeah,
ago.
he just left.
I would just like to, is it true that the city isn't in any way liable if we remove this requirement for a physical, that the city's not in any way becoming liable for a driver having a heart attack and something like that, right? It's all on the businesses, correct?
We certainly would argue all of our exemptions under the Governmental Tort Claims Act against any liability. My strong advice would be that no, we would have no liability.
Even with the historical requirement?
Even with.
Okay.
There's a specific exemption under the Tort Claims Act for licensing requirements. So we're exempt from liability in regard to our licensing requirements, which is what this would boil down to.
Okay. Any other discussion on item 5F? We do have a motion pending to approve this going back the city. Now, let me just ask a point of order to council, if I could. All right, so we vote to approve this. This is saying make the change. Yes, city council, we agree to take this out. But let's say this doesn't get approved. Let's say we vote and it's not approved. Then we could have another motion of, hey, we think it needs to be something like this, and then we could provide that back to city council. Am I correct that if something doesn't get approved of what they recommend, we can recommend something back to them?
Yeah, but I think you would have to put that on a future agenda. You couldn't say, we want to make a recommendation for this. It would have to be on an agenda so that notice could be given.
So an example would be here, if we disapprove, if we vote and we don't approve this item, so city council would get that we don't approve of that, so we want it just like it says. But if we sit up here and say, geez, we really liked it to be, every day get a physical, then we would ask the staff to do their work and provide something to us at the next meeting that would say that.
Right.
Okay. All right. And that's on the next three items. That's how it works going back to the city council. Either it's yes or no, and if it's something else that we want, we'd have to have it as an item for discussion next month or whenever it would come up in front of us. Okay? So is that clear? Okay, good. All right, so any other item, any other talk, comments on item 5F? Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Littlefield, seconded by Commissioner Witcher, to approve item 5F. Can I have your votes, please? Okay. Item 5F is not approved. Okay. Okay, now we go on to item 5G. Oklahoma City Council to consider a recommendation to the Oklahoma City Council on proposed amendments to the draft ordinance amending Articles 1 and 2 and adding Article 3 to Chapter 56 of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code 2010 regarding motor vehicles for hire, amending Section 56-80A7 by adding the specific requirements for an Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation background check, Section 56-207A7 by adding the specific requirements for an Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation background check, Section 56-301C4 by adding the specific requirements for an Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation background check, and Section 56-311C by modifying the application requirements to be the same as Article 1 and 2 application requirements. Ma'am?
Thank you, Chairman. So in our proposed amendment, we require in Articles 1, 2, and 3 that OSBI background checks be conducted during the driver permitting process. As we looked farther into it, the police department let us know that there are levels of background checks that can be requested at OSBI, and so what we the recommendation that council is making is to say to kick that up a notch and require a sex offender registry check and a violent offender registry check for all drivers in all three articles.
All right, thank you very much. Any further staff input? Okay. Do we have a motion concerning item 5G?
I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5G from Commissioner Jenkins. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And we have a second from Commissioner Witcher. Do we have any talk on this item?
It's a given to me.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Jenkins, seconded by Commissioner Witcher, to approve item 5G. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. H. Oklahoma City Council to consider a recommendation to the Oklahoma City Council on proposed amendments to the draft ordinance amending Section 56-221 by amending the definition of taxi meter and Section 56-24 by removing the requirement of subsection B for a traffic commission review for the fares and/or rates to be charged by the Article 1 companies. Ma'am?
So in the current code that's in place, the Traffic Commission, upon application for a license by a taxi company, looks at the rates that they propose under the standard of fair and reasonable. That's what the current requirement is. What this amendment from council says is that there won't be that submission or that consideration by Traffic Commission upon the application of a taxi company, that instead what will be left in place is the current requirement for a posting of rates 30 days in advance. So the posting requirement remains, but the submission to Traffic Commission and that approval process would be removed.
Thank you very much. Is there any further input?
The only thing I'd add to that is that when a vehicle for hire companies come in and make their application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity, that's the one and only time that this body would ever look at their rates. And from that point forward, they just they amend their rates by making an application with the supervisor of licenses. So it's only looked at that one time.
Okay. Do we have a motion concerning item 5H?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hale to approve item 5H. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Jenkins. Okay, one thing I'd like to bring up before we move on with the talk on this item is it was my opinion, from what I've read and what I heard, is that City Council is wanting to allow vehicle for hires, mainly taxis, to have surge rates, similar to TMVs having surge rates. Meaning, if they make their application to be a taxi service here, by this change to the ordinance that we would be sending in, we wouldn't be able to see what the rates are, and then when they submit it, they could be able to do surge pricing, which was talked about at the subcommittee meeting we had years ago about surge pricing. And it never was really clear whether vehicles for hire can do that. And so what we always received was, okay, this is the rate, this is the per 0.6 of a mile, this is startup, this is per different, by the number of people in the taxi kind of pricing. Nowhere did they ever come and say, hey, at midnight, we want level 2 pricing, where we times 2 what our rate is. And Sunday mornings at 4 in the morning when there's nobody doing anything, we want level 3. That if they want a taxi, they really need to pay for it. That never came up. And so it's my opinion that where City Council's going is that this would be allowed as it is with TMVs. TMVs, as we know, and we've heard stories and we've seen it, where they may be 5 times the rate, depending on surge pricing. So I'd just like to ask Council, am I correct that if we get out of this business and taxi companies could submit a rate structure that shows surge pricing or whatever the term would be?
Chairman, I will advise you the same thing that I advised City Council when the question came up, and that is, I don't think that there's anything inherently unfair or unreasonable about so-called surge pricing. Everything has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis to determine fair and reasonable, but my legal response would be that they could submit those kinds of rate structures, and depending on the characteristics of what the specifics of what they submitted would be a decision that you would have to make under the current ordinance. Certainly, with this amendment, it wouldn't be submitted to you for consideration any further.
Right. And as any change would be, like staff brought up, we only looked at the initial application. Once it goes out, they just have to submit a change, and they could charge whatever they want.
That's correct.
And I think where City Council was going was, let industry drive it. Let need drive it. And if a company wants to do a ×3 and nobody uses it, they'll figure out that that's probably not a good price. And it's my understanding that's where City Council may be going on this issue, is let the supply and demand go with the charging. So by taking us out of it, it's always was kind of there, it just never was done, but now because of the TMVs and how, it seems like it's working for them, that at certain times they can do it ×2, ×3, ×4, that now the other vehicles for hire can do the same thing.
So if, for instance, our taxi companies, because they didn't think in terms of having these different pricing structures, they are pricing 24 hours a day for what they need to make at 1:30 on a Saturday morning, I guess there's a potential that everyday prices could come down.
Could come down, go up, it's up to the supply and the demand. So this ordinance right here is just talking about the application. There would just not be that portion of the application that we would look at. But a follow-up talk is there's nothing in the ordinances to keep a company from submitting a multi-rate structure like TMVs are currently doing. And that I think is the intent of City Council by having us out of it, is so that can occur as the supply and demand goes.
Would they then also, if I'm reading this correctly, would they then have to post the rates within their vehicles to passengers? It would just show the band of rates. 10 o'clock to midnight is this. I mean, I'm just using it as an example. Will that be communicated, even if there is, fluctuating prices? Would that be communicated and posted in the vehicles? And then, Councilor, you mentioned something about a 30-day something. Mm-hmm. It has to be out there 30 days prior, or it has to be in the license office 30 days prior to it being in effect. Well, help me just get that straight. So the customer will know, and it will be on record for 30 days prior to it being charged, or that being the structure?
Okay, to answer your second question first, the 30-day posting requirement is that it be posted with the city. Is it the supervisor of licenses? Where the supervisor of licenses is where they have to post that 30 days before they begin charging that different rate. So that would occur. And then there's also a posting requirement that their rates be visible. I believe it's on the door. Is that right? Okay, inside the vehicle. So those are the two posting requirements.
So if I typically call this cab at 7 o'clock in the evening, and I'm going to see something inside that says, you know what, if I start calling you at 10 o'clock, my rates may be different. Hypothetically. I mean, it will be communicating there could be a price increase on different days of the week or different times of the day.
Whatever it is that they're requiring on that rate structure has to be visible to the passenger inside the vehicle, and also posted with the city 30 days in advance. So I suppose if a citizen wanted to know what the rates of the taxi cabs were before they called and even made the ride, the place to call, I hope they don't kill me for saying this, but the place to call would be the city supervisor of licenses.
And like on the TMVs, what they've talked about is because when you sign up for the deal, the current rate structure is posted right there on the phone. So you know you're paying the ×2 or the ×3 or the ×1 rate for that specific ride. So it would be the same kind of thing that when you jump in the taxi, you would be able to see that you're, however they would structure it, whether it be time-wise or surge-wise, or just by saying, right now we're at number 3. Because of the amount of work that's out there, we're now charging higher.
So this essentially levels the playing field on
Well, I think
pricing,
that's
if
the
there's
intent
any-
of City Council by bringing this back to us, because it really had this ordinance, by us looking at a rate structure at the start of the application, was just a starting point. This is what I think I want to see as a rate. They come in, we say yes. One day later, they go and they make an application, and then 30 days after that, they change their rate. So it really didn't have any impact on what we do. I mean, it was just that first initial look, then they just file it, then it's up to the industry and the supply and demand. Will people pay for what they charge? I think the intent of this ordinance is just saying, we're out of the business of price of a vehicle for hire. The city's out of the business for price of vehicle hire, and if they want to have surge like TNVs do, then taxi companies can. I think that's the intent and the reason why they're asking us to get out of the rate business. Okay? Any other talk on item 5H? Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins to approve item 5H. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Okay, let me ask Counselor here, because of item 5F not getting approved, so we're saying back to City Council, we still want that 5-year check. Is that what we're saying, Counselor? Counselors?
You've made a recommendation against that provision, and so council will be notified of your recommendation. They will still proceed with the vote at the next council meeting upon which this is scheduled.
Right, so we're sending G and H saying, yep, we agree with you. That was great thinking. We agree. We're saying on F, no. That's not what we recommend.
Yes.
Disapproving what they wanted. Is there a venue that we can send back to them something to explain why, or is that a concern, or do we just say that's it? We just said no.
I think you as chairperson could certainly write a memo to council to be delivered to them. I don't think you could write one as a body.
Right. Or even, I mean, if they really cared, they could watch this and hear our talk on the issue.
Sure.
Just like we could have watched them last week and heard their talk on the issue.
Sure.
Okay.
But we can show up at council when it's up and make comments ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Right. Any of the traffic commissioners can show up and speak on their own behalf and recollect what was said. Of course, not speaking as the body per se, because that would have to be something that would be
You'd have to vote on it.
That would be a voted resolution per se. That would be on the minutes, like we did back at the start of the year. So if the city council really wanted to know why we said no, why we recommended no back to them, this is a matter of record, and it's on video, and they could watch it.
That's right. I wouldn't presume to speak about what your legislative intent was on the vote, because each one of you could have something different in mind.
Right.
Certainly, I think your vote speaks for itself, but absolutely, if you wanted to come to council or you wanted to send a memo to council or speak to your individual council person, you could certainly do that.
Okay, that's some good counsel. So, we could come and talk, just like we said here. You could call your own city councilman and pass your own feelings along to your city councilman. Now it comes around to the point of, if we do want to talk about this item specifically and make a recommendation that's stronger, say, we could start talking about it when it comes around for traffic commissioner items. Is that how these talks started?
You could certainly request staff to bring a draft to you, but I have to say it won't catch up with this.
Oh, no, right, yeah.
Because this will be coming up for final hearing, and so anything else would be a new amendment to be considered.
Right, yeah, right. So all I'm saying is, if we would like to talk and say, you know what, 5 years is not strong enough, it needs to be stronger, it needs to be the full evaluation, head to toe, whatever, we could talk about it when it comes around to your time to talk here on the Horseshoe, and then if we agreed, we could have the staff present something to us in the future. So I just wanted to make that clear, that if we did want to do something stronger than even the what's currently down, that could occur. Okay, good. All right. Thank you for your help on all that to make it clear. Okay, citizen comments from citizens. Sir? If I can have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. David Batson, 4225 Southwest 44th Street. I'm the president of Airport Express. I don't have anything in what's going on with the ordinance today. I have been talking with people to try to get a definition that I feel is going to be put on my business, which in 1988, our first license with the city was licensed under public van. Nothing's been changed. We've been operating that way peacefully, out of sight, no problems the whole time. We've built a great service. We have a bunch of people, a lot of happy families that work for us, people that we take care of. The definition of airport shuttle now is brought up, and it says 6 to 15 passengers, but then it narrows it down to and from the airport only. That's not our business. That's what we do. We expand beyond that business. And I'm concerned about that, and I'm asking if we could modify it or strike that definition, go back to public vans. Public vans allowed us to continue a ride after that. We take people from the airport to a hotel, contract with all the big businesses in town, and we'll wait for them to get their luggage. We'll take them to their place of business. We'll take them back later if we need to. We contract with a lot of people. We have a major oil company in town. We transport all their new recruits into town. We're a booming city, booming state on oil and gas, and take them to a hotel that the company bought. We pick them up in the mornings 5 days a week, take anywhere from 12 to 40 people to their training facility for their recruiting, for their HR beginnings. I'm scared the way this is written that I'll be operating in a gray or even outside of the law, and I'm just asking if we can get it amended to open up the part of work that I've been doing the whole time.
Okay. Ma'am, if you could help
Chair,
out.
there's not a docket item under which you can consider this.
Right.
This is just a citizen to be heard item. Certainly, he can appear before council when council considers the ordinance draft, if they're persuaded. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
I'm David Batson.
I'm sorry, Mr. Batson. If they're persuaded by Mr. Batson's position, then they can certainly vote to strike that language or amend that language, what we call from the floor. It can be done right there at the final hearing.
Okay.
So that's the place to have it addressed. Otherwise, again, like I said on the previous matter, you'd have to propose an entirely new amendment.
I've been involved in the email string with City Council, with the councilors, and Major Berry, and I thought I was taking the right steps towards it then by saying this is where I see a problem with it, and I thought I was very clear during that process. They were nice enough to bring it in and show me the amendment that was coming up, and I've just, now I'm down to the point where none of that, I guess, it was falling on deaf ears, or I never got a yes, we're going to look at it, or no, you can't do it, and that's where I'm at today. It's not that I'm just waiting and nothing happened. It's getting to the point of no return, and I don't need to have a problem for my business.
Well, Chair, what I would say to Mr. Batson is certainly your emails have been seen by a number of people. Once it gets presented and proposed to council, it's entirely up to them. Once the initial hearing is set, they make the policy calls on those kinds of issues, so it's not up to legal at that point, and it's not up to the police department. It's
I didn't know
entirely...
who started the amendments, who initially wrote them. That's who I thought I was dealing with. The people who actually wrote it down and started it, so I thought I was getting with the right people. Okay.
Well, I understand, sir, it's before city council now.
Okay, so there's really two options. One is you show up when this is finally read, and you make the same statement, and ask them to not approve what was changed in this going forward. But if for some reason they say no and they go ahead, you can always have the staff present something to us for a future change. Am I correct? In the future. I mean, we can always make a recommendation to City Council to change the ordinance.
Staff doesn't generally present things at the request of citizens.
Okay.
They present things at the request of the board or commission or council.
Oh, okay. All right. So the best counsel is to show up at the city council when this item comes up. As you did here, you just presented saying, please don't put these words to what I do. And then it would be simple, as you said, ma'am, for city council to say, yes, we agree, take that little bit out. You would provide counsel on what impact it would have or not have. You would be able to provide that input to the city council, both on far as the city goes, and then you'd be able to provide input on impact to what you do, and then the city council would be able to make a choice.
Okay, but only in the public city council meeting? Do I only speak then?
You are always welcome to contact the mayor and city council. They have staff that work 5 days a week, so you can always
I'll start
contact
that.
them that direction. But as far as taking official action, you know, I can't advise you what to do. What I can say, your options are, yes, you could contact them before the next council meeting, or you can come to the next council meeting, or you can do both.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, very good, thank you. Anybody else? Any other comments from citizens? Okay, reports and other items from the traffic commissioners, committee, staff, and councilor's office. Start over here to the right. Sir?
I have nothing to report, sir.
All right. Commissioner Littlefield?
I have nothing to report, sir.
Very good. Commissioner Hale?
Nothing, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Schuline?
Nope, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Jenkins? Nothing? Okay. Sir, anything? No, sir. Okay, you're just going to try to send the cops out to that area to take a look until things get posted?
Yes, sir. I'll pass the information on to our
Very much.
homeowners.
Counselor? Oh, one moment. Oh, hi there. Oh, I haven't got to you. I'm sorry. Yes.
That's okay.
Do you
I
have
one
anything,
thing.
ma'am?
Yes, I do.
Okay, sorry.
So when we revisit whatever we're going to have a position on as a group or not on the item we just voted down.
We are going to revisit. I mean, unless you wanted to. So where I think it's at, Counselor, could you?
So you voted today on to not recommend or reconsider the amendment that the City Council sent back. We can bring back something else at a later point for the body to consider.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about.
It's going back for final approval, I believe, before this body moves again.
That's fine. I'm not saying to jump in line right now and stop it from the train. That train has left the station. The next train, when it comes around, what I would like to make sure we are able to get to is a point of view on what's the standard amongst carriers. You know, not just taxi carriers or maybe larger cities that have, you know, a larger volume, smaller volume, other transport, human
We can
transport.
get that information,
I'm just
but
saying,
our action item, we could ask the staff to just research in the next month, what do our bus drivers do here? Now, I know for a CDL, I believe there's some sort of physical, if you're talking like a school bus driver or something. So, I mean,
compare and
we
contrast.
could ask-
I want to pull it out of my pocket.
Well,
I want to have a point.
We could ask the staff to go check what is the city required for the city buses, like we're talking about wrecker service was mentioned, some of the other things. See what's out there.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and so, staff, if we could maybe get something to be reported next meeting, just to let us know what's out there as far as physicals and drivers and that kind of thing.
We'll pass it on to the public with the counselor's office on getting that information.
Yeah, just something that might be out there, what is going on out there. Okay, and sorry for skipping you.
That's fine.
Okay. Counselor, nothing? Mr. Chai? You had your...
No, we just got our standard report on those neighborhood traffic controls that we are able to handle administratively. It's just summarized on the last page of your report. That's it.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn? Somebody?
So moved.
We have a motion from Commissioner Witcher. Second by Hale, Commissioner Hale. All right, can I have your votes, please? All right, we're out of here.